The town of Willow Creek was small, quiet, and deeply religious. On Sundays, everything stopped. Shops closed, roads emptied, and by 10 a.m., almost every family walked to the old wooden church at the end of Main Street, the Church of Everlight. That Sunday morning, 50 children from the town gathered outside the church, smiling in their clean clothes. Boys wore button-up shirts and neatly combed hair. Girls had ribbons in their braids and shiny black shoes. Parents waved goodbye and reminded them to behave and listen to Pastor Elijah. Nobody knew it would be the last time they ever saw there. Children out the church doors closed at 10:05 a.m. The bells rang once, and then silence. Hours passed. Parents waited at home, expecting to hear footsteps running back, laughter filling the streets. But as the sun began to set behind the hills, no child came home by 6 p.m. Worry turned into panic. Dozens of parents ran to the church. The doors were locked. Windows were covered with black curtains. They knocked. They shouted. But no one answered. Inside, there were no voices, no lights, no movement. One father broke down the back door with a metal pipe. When the townspeople entered, what they found was worse than a nightmare. The church was empty. No children, no adults, no Pastor Elijah, nothing. But it didn't feel right. Candles were still burning, dripping wax down wooden benches. The smell of incense strong and strange hung in the air. There were signs of something wrong. Shoes were lined up neatly along the back wall, dozens of small shoes. Sunday school books were stacked perfectly on each bench, untouched. A black cloth covered the main altar. One mother screamed when she saw what was drawn on the walls. Symbols, circles with eyes, stars inside triangles, and strange writing in red ink covered nearly every corner of the building. On the floor was a chalk circle with ashes inside it, surrounded by what looked like burned dolls and flowers. Police were called immediately, but even they were confused. No broken windows, no signs of struggle, just disappearance. They searched every room. The nursery, the prayer hall, even the attic. Nothing. And someone noticed a trapdoor hidden beneath the altar. When officers opened it, a cold rush of air came up. A narrow staircase led into darkness. They followed it down. What they found made. One officer quit his job that same night. Below the church was a stone basement, old and rotten, with mold on the walls and broken furniture. In the center of the floor was another symbol, bigger, drawn in something dark. There were ropes tied to the walls and old wooden benches lined up facing a small stone platform. On that platform was a child's backpack. Inside the bag, there was a half-eaten sandwich, a crayon, and a Sunday school note with a heart sticker. No children, just echoes. The town went into shock. News reporters came. Cameras flashed. Helicopters circled. But no one had any answers. How could 50 children vanish in one day from one locked building without any noise? Everyone asked the same question. Who was Pastor Elijah? He had come to Willow Creek 2 years earlier. Tall, calm, with soft blue eyes and a warm smile, he won everyone's trust quickly. His sermons were full of light, hope, and forgiveness. People loved him. Kids loved him even more. He told parents he would teach the children to walk in light. No one ever expected evil. That night, parents stayed in the church, crying, praying, searching. Volunteers searched the woods. Drones flew over the rivers. Dogs sniffed every trail. But nothing was found. By the third day, the government declared it a national investigation. Detectives from 3 states arrived. They started digging into Elijah's past, and what they found was terrifying. He was not who he said he was. His name was not Elijah Ward. He had used 4 different names in 5 different towns, And in 2 of those towns' years, ago small churches had also burned down. After strange disappearances, but the records were sealed. No one had looked closely before. Now, Willow Creek had become something else. A haunted place. A place where people spoke in whispers. Place where 50 families lit candles every night, but never got answers. And in the middle of it all was a church that stood silent, as if watching everyone. As days passed, fear spread. Because if someone could take 50 children without sound, without force, without leaving a single body, what else could they do? The people of Willow Creek weren't just scared anymore. They were starting to believe the church was cursed. And the worst part? It had only just begun. After the shocking disappearance of 50 children, the Church of Everlight stood like a ghost, a coast. Hollow shell full of questions. Yellow police tape wrapped around its old wooden doors. No one was allowed near it, yet locals crossed themselves every time they walked by, as if the building could still see them. But what scared people most was this: the church was never real. When investigators checked the national church records, the Church of Everlight didn't exist. It had no license, no tax records, no ties to any known religious group. Even the land it sat on was bought using a fake name. The building had just appeared 2 years ago, built quickly, quietly. People thought it was a gift from God, a miracle. Pastor Elijah claimed it was a house of light for lost souls. But now, it looked like a trap. Detectives went back into the church to look again. This time, they noticed things no one saw during the panic. The stained glass windows didn't show holy figures or saints. They showed children standing in fire, eyes closed, hands lifted toward the sky. One window showed a large dark shape behind them, horned, shadowed, faceless. The hymn books had no common prayers inside, just pages and pages of chants. Words written in strange old letters. Some pages had been torn out and burned at the edges. One officer opened a hidden drawer in the altar. Inside was a black cloth bundle. He unwrapped. It slowly unfroze. Was full of small teeth, human baby teeth, cleaned and wrapped in white cloth. Each bundle tied with thread. That's when the lead investigator ordered a deeper search. The whole church was to be stripped: floorboards, walls, everything. What they found next was worse. Behind the wooden panels near the back wall, there was a small door, no handle, nailed shut. When they pulled it open, the smell hit them first. Something rotten and wet. Inside was a narrow passage. The walls were covered with children's drawings. Hundreds of them. Stick figures, suns, trees, a strange tall man drawn again and again. And over pictures of a black sun with red eyes. In one drawing, 50 small figures stood in a circle. Above them was a large winged shadow. The words under the picture said, "He will make us light again." But the most horrifying part, each drawing had a name on it, a child's name. And when officers checked the names, they matched the missing kids. All 50. Some drawings had dates. The last date, 2 days before the disappearance. Investigators began to question how the town missed all this. How could no one notice such darkness right in front of them? But someone did. An old man named Harold, once the town's mayor, came forward. He had been the one who sold the land to Elijah. He confessed something chilling. He had sold the land, cheap, because no one else would touch it. Back in 1896, the same land was home to a secret group called the Children of the Everlight. They were not Christians. They were something else. Their leader, Sister Mara, believed in something called cleansing the future. She claimed children carried the purest spark, but that spark had to be burned clean before adulthood. Harold said that cult had vanished after a fire burned down their meeting house, killing 12 children. No one ever rebuilt on that land until Pastor Elijah came. That's when people realized this wasn't a new horror. It was something old. Something that had waited patiently beneath the ground. That night, the police sent a new team to search the basement. Using ground-penetrating radar, they found something beneath the cement floor. A false layer. They broke it open. Below was a spiral staircase made of stone going down into total darkness. The deeper the team went, the colder it became. Their flashlights flickered and radios lost signal. Finally, they reached a round chamber. The walls were covered with bones. Skulls, small ones set into the stone like decorations. At the center was a stone slab, and on it, 50 white candles. All UNLIT. In front of the slab was a book open to a page that read, "Their light feeds the ever flame. Let the bloom begin." The team came up shaking, some refusing to return. The FBI took over the next day, but the town already knew. The Church of Everlight was never a place of prayer. It was a doorway, and someone had opened it again. Before the children vanished, Pastor Elijah Ward was seen as a gift from heaven. He had arrived quietly, without a car or bags, just a brown coat, a black Bible, and a warm smile. He spoke gently. He helped the elderly. He gave free food to the poor. His sermons made people cry. People said, "He speaks like an angel." But angels don't lie, and Elijah Ward was not his real name. After the FBI took over the investigation, they ran his fingerprints through a national database. What they found shocked even the most hardened agents. Elijah Ward had no birth certificate. No. Medical records. No. School history. No. Passport. Nothing. It was as if he never existed. But the FBI didn't stop there. They checked faces. They used old photos from unsolved cult cases. And then, a match. 20 years earlier, a man named Jonas Malrick led a cult called the Blooming Dawn in northern Utah. That group believed in soul purification through fire. They promised families eternal life, but only after giving up their children. Jonas disappeared after a church fire that killed 14 kids. That cult leader looked exactly like Pastor Elijah. Same eyes, same face, only younger. When the FBI compared facial data from that fire and recent security cameras at Willow Creek, they were stunned. It was him. The problem? He hadn't aged a day. It didn't make sense. Jonas Malrick should have been at least 60 years old by now. But Pastor Elijah looked 35, maybe 40. Fit, clear skin, sharp memory. As if time never touched him. The deeper they dug, the more cases they found. In 1979, a man named Brother Eli started a purity camp for troubled youth in Oregon. 5 teens went missing. Camp burned down. He vanished. In 1954, a preacher named Father Malrick traveled the countryside, offering baptisms of light. 3 entire families disappeared from rural towns after joining him. And in 1932, a black and white photo from Kansas showed a man leading a strange funeral ceremony. His face, though blurry, was unmistakable. The man in every photo. Was the same. He had many names. But always the same face. And always. Children went missing. A retired agent named Miriam Keene, who had investigated the Blooming Dawn, came out of hiding when she saw Elijah's face on the news. She contacted the FBI and gave them something terrifying. A recording. It was a tape, over 20 years old, from a hidden recorder in the cult's old compound. In it, Elijah's voice could be heard clearly. "We do not die, not truly. We rise. Through the children. Their light feeds us. Their light is us." And then the sound of a child crying and chanting. Over and over. "Everlight, take us. Everlight, make us bloom." Back in Willow Creek, investigators searched the pastor's room in the church again, this time with special equipment. Behind a loose wall panel, they found a black box. Inside were a vial of dried blood, a necklace with 50 small charms, each shaped like a flame, a journal, written in toThe, took weeks to decode. But the pages told a dark story. Elijah didn't believe in God. He believed in something else, not something he called the Everlight, being a force older than the stars. It promised eternal life, power, and freedom from pain, but only if he gave it light, pure light. Children. He believed children were living candles, bright and untouched by sin, and when enough were gathered, the Everlight would bloom. Into this world, locals began to remember strange things. One woman said her daughter came home from Sunday school and whispered, "Pastor says if I'm good, I'll fly with the stars soon." Another recalled her son refusing to sleep, saying, "The Everlight man watches me through the walls." And a third mother found her daughter drawing circles with burning suns inside. No one thought anything of it back then. But now, they were pieces of a puzzle. The last pages of Elijah's journal were the most disturbing. He had written, "The bloom must be perfect this time. The gate is thin now. The stars are ready. They are all here, waiting. And I will walk between light and shadow." The final sentence. Once they vanish, I rise again. The FBI released this information to the public, but instead of relief, it caused fear. Because if Elijah had done this before, and if he always disappeared after, that meant he was still out there, somewhere, watching, waiting, and worse. He might never die, asterisk. After uncovering the truth about Pastor Elijah's fake identity, investigators turned their attention to something even darker, his beliefs. Hidden inside a locked trunk, deep beneath the church's rotting basement, they found a large leather-bound book. The cover was stitched together from different animal hides. At the center was a burned-in mark, a black sun with a human eye in the middle. The title was written in a language no one recognized, but the name given by researchers was The Everlight Doctrine. This wasn't just a religious book. It was a manual for rituals. The pages were full of strange symbols, hand-drawn diagrams, and step-by-step instructions for something called the blooming. Each chapter was written in both symbols and English, like it had been translated from an older secret language. The more experts read, the more terrified they became. The doctrine taught that children were lanterns, vessels of untouched light. Before the age of 13, their souls shone with divine fire, perfect for feeding an ancient being that lived between worlds. The being was called Everlight, but it wasn't holy. It was hungry. According to the text, Everlight was not a god of love, but a god of transformation. It promised life without death, a body without rot, a mind that could travel between shadows. But to bloom this gift into reality, sacrifice was required. 50 children, pure, together, in one place, under one leader. Only then could the bloom begin. Each ritual in the book had a name: the waking circle, the softening of light, the vessel's feast, the final flame. What disturbed investigators most was that these weren't vague ideas. They were instructions. Pages included details like what kind of incense to burn during the ceremony, what tone the chants should follow, how to dress the children, what to feed them before the ritual, and finally, how to release the light from their small cages. That last line was repeated over and over in red ink. Release the light. Let them bloom. The vessel will guide them. The vessel, it seemed, was the cult leader. Elijah. Authorities also found drawings in the doctrine haunting, childlike images showing what looked like the blooming process. In one, children stood in a circle holding hands. In the next, their eyes were glowing. In the third, their bodies were falling into light. And behind them, always, that same figure, A tall man with no face, arms stretched wide, a flame burning in his chest. Everlight. Historians were called in. One professor from New England recognized the sun-eye symbol from an old European cult in the 1500s called the Bright Path. They too believed in child purity and mass ascension. Their temple was burned by villagers. After 5 children were never found. Same number of candles. Same chance. The connection shocked everyone. This wasn't Elijah's belief. It was a system passed down, copied, hidden. And now it had returned to Willow Creek. More strange items were uncovered in the basement. A child-sized ceremonial robe, stitched with sun and star symbols. A long curved blade decorated with bone handles and ancient writing. 50 empty candle holders arranged in a perfect circle, and a large painting of Elijah standing in front of a black flame. The children in the painting were not crying. They were smiling. One expert in ancient religion made a chilling statement on live news. This doctrine doesn't speak of death as an end. It speaks of it as a door. These people believed they were opening a way to something else. And every time they do it, they get a little closer. Then came a final twist. Inside the church attic, behind a false wall, a box of letters was found. Letters from Elijah to someone he called the Watcher. The letters included updates on light gathering, obedience training, and spiritual sealing. But one message stood out. This time I feel the veil is thinnest. I hear their voices at night, those who bloomed before. They stand at the edge of light and shadow, waiting for the circle to complete. Tell the others, I am ready. Who was the Watcher? Was Elijah part of something bigger? A network? Or was he writing to something else? The FBI realized one terrifying truth. The Church of Everlight may have been just one branch of a much larger tree. A tree with deep, ancient roots, still growing. 17 days after the 50 children vanished, something impossible happened. A boy was found alone, dirty, barefoot, wandering through the dense black pine forest, 22 miles from Willow Creek. He didn't speak. He didn't cry. He just stared. Ranger who discovered him said the boy was covered in ash, his hands scraped, his lips cracked from thirst. He wore a shirt that didn't fit him, like it belonged to someone else. The only thing he carried was a torn piece of cloth in his fist, a church cloth, with the Everlight symbol burned into it. At first, no one knew who he was. But a quick scan of his face confirmed it. Jonah Alder, age 9. One of the 50 missing. Except now, he was the only one to return. Doctors tried to talk to Jonah, but he just rocked back and forth in the hospital bed. Every time someone said the word church, he shut his eyes and shook his head. It took days before he spoke a single word. When he did, sent chills down every spine in the room. They're not dead, he whispered. They're floating. Child psychologists worked with him, gently trying to understand what he had seen. Jonah would draw instead of speak, and what he drew made people sick to their stomachs. He drew the same thing over and over. A circle of children holding hands, a tall man with no face behind them, a huge black flower opening in the sky, children's bodies turning into glowing lights. In one drawing, he colored the sun completely black and wrote one word below it, loomed. After weeks of silence, Jonah gave the agents small pieces of information, fragments that didn't make sense at first. He said, they made us drink something sweet but hot. It burned in our throats. We had to sit still inside the circle. If you moved, you got punished. They sang the same song over and over until we couldn't think anymore. But most terrifying of all, he told us we'd become stars, that the Everlight would kiss us. I saw it. It looked like fire with teeth. Jonah described a place underground, not just the basement, but something deeper. A stone room with walls that hummed. The air was wrong. he said. It felt like it was watching us. He claimed there were tunnels the police had not found. We walked for hours. Down, always down. Pastor Elijah said it had to be deep enough for the bloom to reach the sky. One agent asked him, "What happened to the other kids?" Jonah paused, then said, "They stepped into the light. And then, they weren't kids anymore." When investigators checked Jonah's body for marks, they discovered something horrifying. On his back, under his shoulder blades, were 2 deep scars, symmetrical, surgical. Doctors said it looked as if something had been removed from beneath the skin. There was also a strange symbol burned into his left heel. It matched a symbol from the Everlight Doctrine, a glyph meaning not ready. The cult had marked him as incomplete, unworthy of blooming, which meant they let him go. Or worse, he escaped before it was finished. Jonah was placed under 24/7 protection. But odd things began happening around him. The lights in his hospital room flickered constantly, even with new wiring. The nurses complained of hearing whispers behind the walls. One night, a nurse said Jonah was sitting up, whispering in a language she didn't know. His eyes rolled back, hands tracing circles in the sheets. When she called his name, he looked at her and said calmly, "They're coming for me at midnight." She quit the next morning. Jonah's final drawing, before he stopped speaking again, showed the town of Willow Creek from above, dark and surrounded by forest. Above it, floating in the sky, was a huge flower with black petals. In the center of the flower, 50 small lights floated like fireflies. He handed the drawing to the agent and said, "They're still here, just in a different way." After that, Jonah never spoke again. He was moved to a secure federal facility. But a month later, during a routine room check, guards found his bed empty. The windows were locked, doors sealed. The only thing left behind was a drawing on the wall. A stick figure standing alone, holding hands with shadows. The title written above it in Jonah's small handwriting, "Now I'm ready." The 51st child was gone again, but this time, he left on his own. Asterisk after Jonah vanished from the federal facility without breaking a lock, setting off a single alarm, or being seen on any camera. Federal agents returned to Willow Creek. This time, they didn't come to investigate. They came to dig Jonah's drawings, his descriptions of walking downward for hours, and his talk of stone that hummed convinced them there was more under the town than anyone realized. So, they brought radar scanners, ground-piercing drones, and soil mapping equipment. What they found stunned everyone. Beneath Willow Creek was a hidden world, a massive network of tunnels, some no more than crawl spaces. Others large enough to drive trucks through, ran under nearly the entire town. But they didn't begin from the church. They began from beneath the oldest graveyard in Willow Creek, a forgotten cemetery, where the original settlers of the town were buried over 150 years ago. And beneath that ground, something was moving. At first, they thought the tunnels were part of old mining routes. But miners don't dig in circles, and they don't carve altars into the walls. When they went underground, armed with gas masks and lights, they saw carvings. Everywhere sun symbols, flower patterns, and rows of small handprints pressed into the walls, as if made by children. In the deepest chamber they discovered, there were benches made of bones, arranged in a circle. Each bench held wax drippings, tiny robes, and burned pieces of paper with children's names. 50 names. The same names from the missing list. One team member got sick and had to be airlifted out. Another refused to go back down, but the director of the operation insisted, "We need to go deeper." That's when they uncovered the well room. It was a perfect circle, 30 feet wide, with a massive open pit at the center. Carved above the above pit in Latin were the words, "Lux in tenebris floret." The light bloomed in darkness. Inside the pit was a spiral staircase made of bones, human and animal, mixed together. At the bottom of the stairs, cameras caught a massive stone arch, but it wasn't made from local rock. It was something else, black, glossy, warm to the touch, as if it were alive. They called it the gate. The gate had no markings, but it vibrated. When one agent stood near it, the light on his helmet flickered. His breathing became fast and shallow. He claimed to hear children laughing behind the stone. Then, he collapsed. When he woke up, he spoke in whispers. He said, "They're in the light. They sing to us." They're waiting for someone to finish what he started. That same night, he burned all his clothes and tried to pull out his own teeth. They pulled him from the mission. But by then, the others were already feeling it too. Nightmares. Hallucinations. A deep humming noise that never stopped once you heard it. They tried to block the entrance with steel doors, but the vibrations passed through. And then something new happened. In the center of Willow Creek, an old statue that stood since 1880, cracked from top to bottom. Inside the crack was something never seen before. A stone tablet. With Elijah's face carved into it, older, bearded, but the same eyes. And below it, written in English, "He returns in every cycle. The bloom must finish. The town must pay." The town's founding history was a lie. Willow Creek wasn't just a peaceful town that grew by accident. It was built on top of something ancient. The original founders were not settlers. They were followers. Followers of Everlight. Old city records, once thought destroyed, were found in the attic of the mayor's house. They told the truth. The Church of Everlight had been burned down 3 times before. Each time, the town covered it up. Each time, children went missing. And each time, someone like Elijah returned. Different name. Same face. Same doctrine. Always. 50 children. The current mayor, trembling on camera, said one line that echoed across every news channel. "We are not a town anymore. We're a trap." The government declared Willow Creek containment zone. Residents were relocated. Roads were sealed. But even after it was empty, people reported strange lights flickering in the forest, chanting in the wind, and shadowy figures near the cemetery gate. The final act, it seemed, hadn't happened yet. Willow Creek was no longer on any map. After the tunnel discoveries, the missing children, the gate, and Jonah's second disappearance, the government erased the town completely. They declared it uninhabitable. Radiation warning signs were put up, though insiders confirmed there was no radiation. Something else was leaking from the ground. Something they couldn't explain. The roads were torn out. Homes demolished. The church was burned. Officially. But local whispers say it didn't burn right. That the wood hissed like wet skin. That the black flame danced in unnatural shapes. And that even as it burned, someone heard a hymn playing. Coming from beneath the floorboards, barriers were placed around the site. Drones patrolled the air. But strange things kept happening. Late at night, people from nearby towns saw lights over the ruined soft, golden orbs that floated silently through the trees. Others claimed to hear laughter, high-pitched, childlike, echoing through the hills. One soldier on patrol went missing for 11 minutes. When he was found, he was sitting cross-legged in the middle of the road, drawing in the dirt with his finger. Over and over, he drew the Everlight symbol. When asked what happened, he said, "I just wanted to play with them." They were smiling. He was dishonorably discharged and never seen again. A government tape, leaked 6 months later, showed a surveillance drone catching movement beneath the soil. Shapes, figures. In one frame, 50 faint glowing spots could be seen moving in slow, spiraling formation matching the bloom pattern described in the Everlight doctrine. And the footage went black, and the drone was lost. But the strangest story came from an old Woman named Marianne Alder, Jonah's grandmother. She lived in a trailer outside the containment zone. One night, she heard a soft knock at her door. It was Jonah, but he wasn't a boy anymore. He looked 16, maybe 17, calm, clean, wearing the same oversized shirt he wore when first found in the woods. But, untouched by time, his eyes glowed faintly in the dark. He didn't speak at first. He just handed her a drawing. It showed a flower, made of stars, each petal with a child's face in it. At the center was a black sun. Marianne said she wept and asked him, "Where are the others?" Jonah answered with a smile, "They're not lost. They're becoming." Then he turned and walked into the forest. She never saw him again. After that night, dozens of similar stories spread. Sightings of Jonah. Always alone. Always. Older than before. Always carrying a candle, and always repeating the same message to those who listened. The bloom is not death. The bloom is the next step. Years passed. The ruins of Willow Creek became overgrown, hidden behind trees and forgotten roads. But hikers who wandered too close spoke of a voice in the wind. A boy's voice, calling names, 50 names, the names of children who never came home from Sunday school. One group of thrill-seeking YouTubers once live-streamed themselves entering the outer zone. They joked, laughed, and said they were going to find ghost kids. The stream cut off after 27 minutes. Authorities found their van days later. Inside, the seats were empty, but still warm. On the windshield, drawn with a child's finger, we found the light. And then came the final recording. A late night radio station host received a strange call from a soft-spoken girl. She didn't say her name. She only asked, "Do you remember Willow Creek?" The host hesitated, then said yes. The girl whispered, "We remember you." And the line went dead. The station's power cut out. When it returned, every file in their system, music, ads, programs, was replaced by one audio loop. Children humming softly, endlessly. Today, Willow Creek is a forgotten name. The barriers are still up, but no one guards them anymore, because no one dares get close. They say the ground hums. The wind sings. And if you stand in the ruins at night, you might see them. Small lights. Moving together, dancing in a circle. Waiting. And sometimes, on the edge of the forest, a boy stands and watches, not blinking, not aging. Just waiting for someone to return. He carries a candle that doesn't burn out. And if you listen closely, you'll hear the final hymn. We walked into the light. The shadows kissed our eyes. The bloom has begun. We are the Everlight.